Welcome to Right Now Workshop Podcast, where you can write a book and change the world. I'm your host, Kitty Bucholtz, and this is episode 117. All I Want for Christmas is a Book Contract, an interview with Alys Murray, coming to you on Thursday, December 20th, 2018. Guess what? Today is the Right Now Workshop Podcast birthday. Woohoo! Can you believe that we've been doing this together for a year? It seems like a year. You know how sometimes seem like more and sometimes things just seem like it's taken way less time? This actually feels like a year. Maybe because it's Christmas time and it's sort of tied inside my brain to Christmas, but I'm super excited. It's been an amazing year. I don't know if you've been able to listen to all the episodes, but we have had some really cool authors coming on and talking to us about their experiences, giving us some tips and advice that might help us so that we have hopefully a smoother writing and editing journey. We've had people talking to us about writing, editing, business, health. So I think it's been helping all of us to have a more productive, calmer kind of year. I hope that it's been helpful to you. I've really enjoyed it, and I promised you a couple of weeks ago that I've been thinking about it, and we're definitely going to do this for at least one more year. Now, there will come a point in the very near future in 2019, I'm going to start talking to you about a way that you can help to help with the costs of the podcast. It costs me a couple $100 a month to run all the episodes, have them hosted, and blah, 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 a whole bunch of stuff. I'll talk to you more about it later, but I'll have to find a way to start paying for that over the next year. Otherwise, we may have to stop. We'll see, but I promise you we're going to do this until next Christmas for sure. So thank you very much for being a part of my little family. Not only am I very grateful to all of my guests, thank you again for being on the show, but I'm super grateful to you, my quietly listening friend. And in the interest of being a friend, there is something I wanted to mention real quick today. I really, really, really want you to think of me as someone that you can trust, who tells you the truth and doesn't sugarcoat things or make it sound like, oh, this is so great, and it's not really great. So remember last week I gave you a little bit of an update on the burnout situation, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like practically 100% my old self. The next day, I don't know what happened exactly, but I just fell into a pit. Like I just fell right back into it very suddenly. And it was distressing. It was distressing because I had been feeling so good the day before. I think it's a combination of a whole lot of things. Holiday stress, moving stress, there's a whole bunch of other things. It doesn't really matter what it is. The point is that for me and for you, if this is something that you've been trying to deal with and that you're struggling with, is that we're just going to have to keep a closer eye on how many different kinds of stresses are in our lives, even if they're good things. Like Christmas stress, okay, when I was having my good day and telling you, oh, it's just so great, I feel wonderful, I was super excited about all the friends I was going to see at Christmas, people who were going to come over here, going to other people's houses, having lunch with people, going out, just all these things that I was planning on doing. And then within about 48 hours, all I could think of was how horrible it was going to be to have people over and to go over to people's house and to try to be in a good mood. And so I know that some of you know what I mean, and it may not be burnout for you. It may be something else about this time of year that makes it a difficult time. But this is what I absolutely do believe, is that we have the ability to take at least some control of what's going on in our minds and in our hearts. Even if there is a physical reason why you're not feeling 100% right now, there is still things that we can do. And this is why I'm sharing it with you, because yes, I was feeling great. Yes, then I fell into a pit and it was horrible. And I was just crying, and I didn't really exactly know why I was crying. I just was feeling like I had been feeling months ago. And it lasted for a few days. And the very fact that it was happening was distressing to me. The fact that it was happening at Christmas, like I was just upset about a whole bunch of things about it that I couldn't control. And it was probably brought about by other things that I couldn't control. So I just wanted to remind you, we need to pay attention to the amount of stress that we have in our lives, even if it's good stress, even if it's like getting married stress, which I think is like maybe some of the best stress. Maybe getting married and having a baby would be the really, really good kinds of stress. But if we can try to balance it and keep an eye on how we feel and help our minds to be thinking calming thoughts and be aware of whether or not things are stretching on the inside to a point where it feels like it's going to burst, and start trying to take control of that before it bursts, I think it will be a very healthy exercise for all of us. It's something that I thought that maybe I didn't need to do that much of anymore because I was feeling so great. But then, yeah, the thing inside popped, I guess, and I fell. So just sharing from somebody who is going through it to you in case you're going through it. I know that's just weird to me how many people I know who are going through burnout, though, you talk about something and then you find out that, it's everywhere and you never noticed it before. So there's that. But also, if you have any friends who maybe are having a hard time either with burnout or with something else during the holiday season, just think if you can help them to create a better, I love brain science, some better, healthier neural pathways where they're thinking about more positive things, not necessarily trying to look at things that they're unhappy with in a positive light, maybe focusing on things that they genuinely are happy with. That's what I'm trying to do. And I think that it does a lot of good. I think that you don't have to try to look at your bad situation and think that somehow there's something good about it, that there is value in that, in looking for the good things that will come out of a hard situation. But at the very least, when you're feeling the worst, I know for me, just thinking of just to find something that I'm genuinely happy about and that I'm not trying to trick my mind into thinking something that I'm not thinking or feeling at the moment, it really helped. Sometimes just finding like, what do I think is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, and putting that on, and maybe I won't really be laughing much, but it turns the corner inside my brain, and I hope it'll do the same thing for you as well. Also, just talking to people who make you happy, who make you laugh. Sometimes it's somebody you've never met before. When I was talking to Alys, getting her name wrong. When I was talking to Alys Murray, today's guest, I was like, she's so cool and she just makes me happy and in a good mood. So you never know, but look for whatever it is going to help you to be in a good mood and to decrease your stress level. And if you have to, I did cancel. Well, I rescheduled. I canceled some lunches and then I rescheduled them. Some social scientists say that is actually not what you should do. You should be out with people, but sometimes I do feel like what I need first is just to sit down and be quiet and take care of me, because maybe part of my stress was I was going out doing too many things with too many people. So all of these things are possibilities for you this holiday, and I just wanted to bring it up, and in a way that that I'm not going to be a person who's going to tell you, yeah, it's all good. I don't know why you don't feel good anymore, because I feel great. And honestly, I just want to be honest and help you to find ways too. I don't want you to be surprised at anything that might be happening inside your head with stress. Not if I can help you to figure it out first and maybe even avoid some of it. So that's me, hoping to be helpful and always slightly worried that I'm just boring the heck out of you. So let's go back to I hope that you have a very happy Christmas, a very happy whatever holiday you're celebrating right now. If you are in summer weather somewhere in the southern hemisphere, I hope that you are having a great outdoor weather kind of stuff going on where you can surf or go to the beach or have a barbecue or have your Christmas feast outdoors. I hope if it's wintertime, maybe you get a little bit of Christmas magic and snow or something like that. That's what I was hoping for. And I do apologize to the Swedes that I seriously startled a couple of nights ago when I was out with some girlfriends and all of a sudden it started snowing. I mean, all of a sudden, like over the course of 2 or 3 minutes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's snowing. And I saw people jump in my peripheral vision. So sorry. Sometimes I can't keep the American in me on the inside. But at least I didn't embarrass my friends, so that's something. Anyway, wherever you are, I'm praying for you. I really am, and wishing you a very happy, peaceful, joyful season of the year. It's going to be a new year, a new day, new plans soon, and we'll talk about that. But in the meantime, let's talk about our new guest. Alys Murray is a first-time author with Hallmark Publishing. She has a new book out called The Christmas Company, and I'm just saying that since this episode is coming out before Christmas, it is a possibility as a last-minute Christmas gift if you need one. Here is Alys. I hope that you love the interview as much as I loved doing it, and have a lovely, lovely week. We'll talk to you later. Today's guest is Alys Murray. Alys writes novels for the romantic in all of us. Born and raised in New Orleans, she received her BFA, majoring in theater and minoring in political science, from NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and her master's in film studies from King's College London. Though she's moved away from home, she'll always be a Southern girl at heart. Welcome, Alys.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here.
Yay! I was so excited to ask you on Twitter if you were interested, and then 2 minutes later, there you were responding, and yay!
Yes, I'm very active on the Twitter. It's kind of a problem, but I do really like it. It's great for engagement. I was so glad to see you and connect with you. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been interviewing the Hallmark Publishing editor/director, Stacey Donovan. She was on twice. And then I'm getting a couple of the Hallmark authors on because in the Hallmark 400 Days of Christmas that they seem to have, there's so much Christmas stories going on. And I thought, what a fun way to end the year with a couple more Christmas books. So you have a new book out called, well, it's newish. I mean, it's new this year, but it came out in October for everybody who likes to start their Christmas reading early, called The Christmas Company, and it came out with Hallmark Publishing. Now, is this your first book?
Yes, it is. It's my debut novel. It wasn't the first book I ever wrote, but it was the first book that I sort of seriously pursued publishing for. And I could not be happier with, the way it worked out with Hallmark. And I actually happened to be writing it. And one day I was on one of my 18 million Twitter breaks while I was writing, and it just popped up on my Twitter that Hallmark Publishing was actively seeking, manuscripts without agents, and I didn't have an agent at the time. So I was like, okay, well, when I finish this, I guess that's where I'll send it. And sure enough, a few months later, I got an agent by that point, but they told my agent that they were really interested in it and they wanted to buy it, and I was just over the moon. It just kind of everything sort of fell into place. So I was really, really thrilled that my first kind of publishing home was with Hallmark.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I imagine I imagine you're still in the honeymoon stage of, I finally have a book out.
Yes. I think it's very surreal, to walk into a store and see your book on a shelf, or, I haven't been back home. I live in London, so I haven't been back home for a couple weeks, but everyone will send me, every time they're in a Target, they'll take a picture of themselves with the book. So that's always, it hasn't gotten old yet. So hopefully it never will, but at least for the moment, it's pretty amazing, pretty exciting.
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure it's not going to get old. My friend Lorraine Snelling has something like 70 books out, and she still gets just tickled when somebody sends her a picture of themselves holding her book in a bookstore in America or someplace else.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Okay, well, I absolutely love, first of all, you have two things going on in your life right now that I love talking about. So first book. So I want to hear everything. People love to hear the first book stories. So please tell us. Also, as an aside, feel free to mention you're engaged. That's so sweet.
Yes. I got engaged in March. It was really, really wonderful. It's kind of a funny story. So I moved to, I did my first 2 years of my undergrad at New York University in the New York campus. And then I came to London to do a playwriting program with the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and the Writers Guild of Great Britain. And I was only supposed to be here for 3 months, and just for the length of the program. And the second week I was in London, I met Adam, and I was just totally head over heels for him. He swept me off my feet. And 3 years later, I'm still here. NYU has a campus in London, so I finished my degree here and then went to get my master's. And so in March, he proposed and I said yes. And so I'm very excited. We're getting married in New Orleans next year, and then we're going to go travel the world together. He works in software development and I write, so we can kind of write from anywhere. So I'm going to go travel Europe and Australia and New Zealand, and then eventually find somewhere to permanently live. But for now, I'm going to do some traveling and just see the world with my best friend. So I am very, very excited about that. Feel very lucky.
Right. Yes. And I have to say that offline, you and I should share some travel tips, because you've lived in London and I've only just moved to Sweden a few months ago, but I lived in Australia and New Zealand, and you want to go there.
Yes. Gotta get your tips. Gotta get your tips.
That's right. Especially if you like Lord of the Rings stuff. I can tell you all sorts of fun stuff in New Zealand. Oh.
Yes, for sure. And he was
okay.
actually the one who encouraged me to write. I mean, he knew that I liked to write, and I was a playwright, of course, but he kind of started to make fun of me. I guess we've been dating about a year and a half, and I loved romance novels. The first year I was in London, I was in a playwriting class, and one of the students said, well, people don't really buy books by women, so that's why you don't really see as many on the shelf. And I was just affronted. I was so angry. Yeah. And so I left class that day, and I was just I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was on the tube, I was on the bus, everywhere I went, I feel like I was just Pigpen, I had a big cloud of anger around me. Yeah. And so I made a vow that day. I was like, okay, for the next year, for the next 365 days, I'm not going to read a single book by a man. And so for the whole year, I only read books by women and by female identifying authors. And so in that, one of the most reliable sections in the bookstore that I could go to find books by women, any book I would pull off the shelf would be by a woman, was the romance section. And I had always really liked romance, but it wasn't until that year that it kind of became my big love and my passion. And because I had been reading so many of them, and because I just was devouring them 4 or 5 a week, my fiance was he was my boyfriend at the time, said, you really should write one. You have a really strong voice. You love these stories. You should just try it. And so I wrote one, and it was not good.
Yeah, as our first books often. Yeah.
Yes, and I still love it. I have such a soft space in my heart for the story about an American and a British prince, which is of course that was going to be my first book.
Of course.
And so I still look back on it very fondly, but it was not very good. But it did teach me so many lessons, and it got me connected with so many people online and in writers groups, and to kind of learn more about the craft and about the business. And then a year after I had finished that first book, I got my first publishing contract with Hallmark. So really kind of put my nose to the grindstone and decided that I really did want to write some romance novels, and here we are.
Oh wow, that's a great story. I love it. Now, so you have a diverse background. I was very interested. I'm like, wow, major in theater, minor in political science. How does one decide to do that? But on the other hand, you also have been quite focused in your studies on creative works, different kinds of things, not novel writing. When I went to grad school, I was writing romance and superhero urban fantasy, but I call it superhero books for women because
I love it.
There's a really strong romantic element as well, but it also has a lot of action and some, fight scenes and some death. So you can't really necessarily call it romance, but so I also had these weird arguments with people in grad school about, excuse me, but your super cool, awesome book is probably going to sell not that much. Romance novelists, I'm not saying me, but I'm just saying there are people out there that they are making buku bucks. So I really think that we should stop, denigrating people that we don't really know that much about.
Absolutely. And for me, it was a big thing, especially when I went to grad school, because when I entered grad school for film studies, what I really wanted to study was kind of pop film. So I wrote my entrance essay on the Michael Jordan Bugs Bunny movie Space Jam. Awesome. And when I wrote it, I was like, I'm so proud of this piece of work, but there's no way anyone's going to let me into grad school.
Yeah.
But they did, thankfully. And for me, it was about what do we learn about ourselves and about our culture and about who we are if we take these kind of junk films as seriously as if we were reading like a Truffaut film.
Yeah.
And so for me, the argument was always like, you are abandoning a huge part of our culture if you say that this doesn't have any value. And for me, so many women, it's obviously a huge industry, tons of people read them, so it has to be important in some way. And so when I read and talk about romance, I always love to pull out those kind of what kind of cultural importance does it have, and what can we learn from them? And I think they're terribly important. And so I love writing them, and I think that I've learned so much about who I am as a person and as a woman, and like relationship dynamics and kind of cultural things. I just feel like there's so much to pull out of romance novels that people just kind of are like, oh, it's bodice rippers, it's trash for women. And I think that they're just missing out. And I get mad at them, but I also feel kind of sorry for them in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And there's stuff that was written before yours and my generation was reading romance novels that I have, I read a few chapters of like a Harlequin romance novel from the 70s. And I was like, because it wasn't written for me. It wasn't written for my generation. And it didn't have anything to do with the way that I saw the world. But the interesting thing is that as every generation comes into its own and starts writing about the things that it sees, like I don't really think so much of myself as a romance writer, so much as I'm writing about people who the primary character happens to always be a woman in my books. I've never written about a male main character, outside of there being, a hero who's the other main character, but really it's about the woman. But it's always about a woman who finds out that she has more power than she realizes. Because that's the thing that I felt that I was learning in life as I was traveling from my 20s through my 30s and keep on going. I still feel like that's what I'm learning. Every time I think that I'm too scared or too weak or too anything, then I start finding this place where I'm like, okay, no, I can do this. It may be difficult. It may be horrendously hard. It may be easier than I think, but I can do it. And I think, that's what I'm trying to write, regardless of the fact that it happens to be in the context of a romantic relationship. But then, you kind of want to say, what's wrong with a romantic relationship? I've been married for almost 30 years. I don't really think there's anything wrong with that. And you're about ready to get married.
Doing the snaps for you.
Yeah. It's wonderful. I love the way that we can look at, because the other thing is that I'm almost positive it was your book that there was some people going off on Twitter, like maybe I kind of want to say it was Rhonda Murworth. Is that how you say her last name? I think it might have been her talking about your book. I could be wrong. Saying, oh my gosh, I loved this book. It like made me, laugh and cry and feel. And I was like, holy cow, that's exactly the kind of writing, and the kind of books that we want to read. So I think it's just so interesting that regardless of what, and you know what, I can feel myself being like, wow, I'm on my soapbox right now. But regardless of whether or not you're writing romance or mystery, or I suppose you could do it with true crime too. It's like, what is really happening within the human condition right now in the world that we are experiencing in this moment?
Absolutely.
I love it. Now, but you also had a bunch of other kinds of writing besides novel writing. So how did you go in the one direction and then turn a little bit in this direction? And are you still writing all different kinds of things?
Yes, absolutely. So it's going to sound silly. So of course, when I was a little girl, I was a voracious reader. So tons of my, very, very little girl years were just like scribbling in notebooks. I think my mom's like the majority of her life's net worth was spent buying me notebooks. So like those were all, just little stories. And then when I kind of became like a angsty teen, that was my like fan fiction years. And then once I went to college, I went for directing specifically because I wanted to be a theater director. I wanted to direct kind of, big Broadway musicals. And as a part of that, I went to Playwrights Horizon Theater School in Tisch. And you have to take every single course that the actors take, which is quite a course load. Yeah. And then you also have to take playwriting and design. So you have to learn, set design, costume design, and playwriting. And the first year I took the class and I was really passionate about it, but I was also kind of miserable because I felt like I felt like I didn't really have a voice, and I felt like I wasn't really passionate about what I was writing. And then I got to my second year and I had this professor who just really believed in me, and he was like, I really feel like you have something to say. And so he like helped me. The second semester was just supposed to be write like a 30-page play, and mine ended up being like a 2.5-hour, like 5-act, like big giant historical drama.
Wow.
And it ended up having a reading at La Mama in New York City, which was like kind of like still to this day, like I published a book and I'm still like, they read my play at La Mama, like like the biggest thing in the world. But
Wow.
and so from that, I always loved writing, but I never felt like I was good enough at it or like anyone would care about what I had to say. And from there, that was when I applied for the program in London, because I was like, okay, well, I should at least try. Like,
Right.
I should at least try and see if it's something that I'm good at or that I'll like, or, at least learn as much as I possibly can about it before I decide that I'm just no good.
Yeah.
And so I got in, and that was how I started really. I did a whole semester where all I did was write scene after scene after scene after scene, until I had a full play. And had a reading of that at the Jermyn Street Theatre in London, which was, again, very, very cool. And then I had a couple plays that were put on by different universities here in London. One was a modern adaptation of How to Marry a Millionaire, which I think is still to this day, like, I really want to make it a romance novel, because it was kind of a romantic comedy play.
Yeah.
And it's set like in Silicon Valley, and it's all about, like kind of the gender politics of Silicon Valley and like the tech industry, and it was very, very fun. So I'm thinking one day I'm going to do a book on that, but we'll see.
Nice.
And at the same time as I was doing all of that, that's when I first kind of started to get into the writing, romance novels. And here I am. Here we are.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, so long as we're talking about Here We Are, let's talk about your book. So remind us again the title. Tell us a little bit about I don't want to give anything away. So I want you to give us the book description, and then tell us like how you came up with the idea and the whole kind of backstory.
Yeah, so it's called The Christmas Company, and it's about a small town in Texas called Miller's Point, where every single Christmas season they throw a Dickensian Christmas festival where they dress up the town like it's, a Dickens London, and it's kind of like an immersive theater thing where you go through and, you hang out with Scrooge and kind of follow his journey through the night. And our heroine, Kate Buckner, just loves the festival. It's kind of her life. And one day, the man who owns the company that owns the festival passes away, and the company goes to his nephew, and the nephew says, "This doesn't make us enough money, and I am closing it down." But Kate kind of sees something in him. She sees that, I think he's just sad. Like, I think it's one of the lines she says. And she decides that she's going to just kind of teach him the magic of Christmas. And if you read the book, you'll see if she does. It's a Hallmark book, so you might be able to guess. But
That's
it's
right.
the journey, not the destination.
That's right. That's right. Always the journey. That's one of the things that people say about romance novels. And now, since I've been pursuing Hallmark, which I don't know if I told you that, but I also saw their open submission period and sent them a book, and then, talking to them about different projects. So it's funny because in my romance writing world, people are like, oh, romances are so formulaic, they're all the same. And I'm like, well, you haven't read more than 2 or 3 if you think that they're all the same. But it's funny because now I'm hearing people say with less of the kind of acerbic tone, but still, Hallmark movies that are all the same. I'm like, well, they're not all the same. Yes, there are some tropes that get repeated, but it's because people like them. But the characters are different, and what's happening is different. And honestly, like in a Hallmark movie, every time there are certain actors where I'm just like, I don't even know what the story's about. I don't care, because I'm definitely going to watch anything that Lacey Chabert is in. I'm just going to. I mean, she could just read a recipe book out loud, and I don't cook, and I consider myself to be like an useless idiot in the kitchen, and I would still be like, oh, isn't she great? I just love her. So tell us and particularly I'm really interested in your take on this, because you are a grad school writer. And so we learn this other way of looking at writing that you don't necessarily learn if you are reading books, reading the books in your genre, reading how-to books, also sometimes specific to your genre, and going to conferences, again, often specific to your genre. It's a different kind of road if you're going through school and having other people tell you what they think that you should think is important. So tell us, how did you go from, I'm sure that it was similar to you, this very, literary, changing the world kind of feel of writing to, I'm going to write a story that makes people happy.
Well, it was tricky. Actually, the transition was harder because I really started out, I was writing the novels before I was writing, kind of the hardcore film studies texts. So it was actually a break in the opposite way, where I was writing these love stories, and I was, writing things kind of in my own voice and having kind of my humor in them and my own kind of take on things, and then getting papers back that were like, this voice isn't literary enough, you don't sound like a professor. And I'm like, but because my kind of philosophy on especially film studies, because so many of the texts are so dense and they're so kind of difficult to mentally penetrate. If I'm writing about pop film, then I want anyone on the street to be able to pick up my book and understand something more about their culture by reading one of my essays. And so for me, I wanted to write not like down to people, but I wanted to write on a level that people could understand and discuss and kind of open up, a different part of their world and their culture. So I definitely had to do a lot of study. I had to do a lot of reading. I had to read a lot of books. I had to rewrite a lot of papers, not after they've been submitted, but just I would write a version that was as if I was, writing it for me or for someone else, and then be like, all right, and how do I translate this into professor speak?
Right.
I'm still not entirely sure I was very successful, but it was funny, in my final dissertation, the feedback was really great, but one of the notes was something to the effect of, you have a lively and engaging voice. I wish I had heard you say it. And I'm like, oh, it's very sweet, but I still don't know if it means that it's good.
Yeah, right.
So I think there is a lot of value actually in having these sort of a very distinct scholarly voice that I do think comes out of the way that I write my romance stories and my novels. My plays are a little bit different. They're all a little bit more, kind of highbrow literature, but I think that's just because I write a lot of plays that are set in the past. So
right.
I think that was kind of the transition for me. But I do think there's value in having both, especially when I write a character like Clark in this book, because the book isn't in first person, it's in third person, but I do think your third person point of view should be very specific to the character that you're writing about.
Yeah.
So when I write someone like Clark, like he's a little more postured, he's a little more tight and dense and more professional. So I think when I write in his voice, I kind of do a little more of like the scholarly film studies girl.
Right.
Me. And then when I do Kate, I can do like the fun, Elise having a glass of wine at the pub telling a story.
Right,
So
right.
I like that I can kind of have both, the best of both worlds when I'm writing really both kind of texts.
Yeah. And the thing is that helps the reader to really feel the character even more than just the words in the order that they're reading on the page. Like they feel it, whether they realize why they can feel it or not. They might just be like, I love this book. I really felt like, the male character, I really understood him. And they might not even understand why unless they really sat down and thought about it. And I don't know how many of us as readers really sit down and think about, why did I feel that way?
Exactly. And I think for me, I always know that I have a good character or that I've built something that I really understand when I'm mid-sentence and I'm like, they wouldn't say it like that. Like in my head, it like sounds funny. It sounds like there's something a little bit off, and then I have to go back and rearrange some things or pick some different vocab. And I think that is always a sign to me that I'm like, oh, okay, I know this person. I understand them. And that always makes the writing just a little bit easier. Not easy, but
yeah.
easier.
Yeah, when you're really listening and then you're like, no, that's not it. Oh, wait, right, this is it. Yeah. Okay, so for everybody who's listening, people are at all different places in their writing, some just starting, some unpublished, but working on it, some published with one book, 5 books, a lot of books. I know different people who are listening, so I got a little bit of everybody. But tell us, for the people who are on a similar journey right behind you. So you submitted, and then how did things work out that you submitted, then got the agent, then ended up with the contract. Everybody wants to know like how to get an agent. People who want to pursue, traditional publishing also need to know how to get an agent. So what was your story?
Absolutely. So I finished the Christmas Company and I went through a couple of rounds of edits just by myself because in London, the kind of writing support scene is very literary. And so the first few times I tried to join writing groups, it was like a very cold reception. So I was at a point where the work was so new, I didn't want to like give it to someone who didn't understand the genre or who didn't understand what I was going for. So I did a couple of versions or a couple of rounds of self-edits. I sent them to a couple of like really close friends. Like, just what are your thoughts, kind of give me that feedback. And then I was like, all right, well, I'll just send it to Hallmark. I think it's as good as it's going to be at this point. And if worse comes to worse, they send me a whole list of, here are all the edits that we think you need before it's ready or whatever. And so I was just like, I'll just send it and see what happens, get the feedback, and then I can go back to the drawing board on edits and that sort of thing. So I sent it to them 1 week. And then a week later was one of the pitch parties with a bunch of agents and on Twitter, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's a finished book. Like, agents are probably going to give me more feedback. So let's do it. So I pitched this book and I pitched a couple of other books that I had. And, I kind of had a slew of responses, which was really, really lovely on both books that I had pitched, or all 3 books I had pitched. And did all the, they ask you to send, it's kind of crazy because every, agent asks you for very specific, very different things.
Right.
So it's like a series of like 4 days after a pitch party on Twitter where you're like, okay, this agent needs 10 pages and this agent needs 50 pages and this agent needs this and this and this. And so you have to like go through, and I made like a spreadsheet. I was a huge nerd about it.
Yeah.
And a week later, Rebecca Angus, who ended up being my agent, she was very fast. She was like, hi, can I call you? I would like to call you and talk about, your future in writing. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. And so I had a call with her, and I had a couple of discussions with, kind of other clients that she had represented, and I kind of did a little bit of research on her, and I really liked her. I connected with her, and so I was like, all right, let's do this. And she was like, really, that fast? And I was like, yep, let's go. And so I had to respond to the other agents and be like, here's, my situation. And they were all very understanding, very, we're sorry to lose you, but obviously a week turnaround time is not, it's really
normal.
Not common.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised and kind of taken back by that. But, and I think the other agents were as well, but I think it did, I found my person, and we really do connect, and she's been a very good advocate for me. And she was the one who was really, as soon as I signed with her, she contacted Hallmark and said, I know this came to you unagented. Is that how you?
Yeah.
That word is hard to say.
Yeah.
Sorry. I feel like there should be more syllables there.
Right.
But I am representing it now. And so she was kind of my liaison with Hallmark and during the contract negotiations and everything. So yes, that was how I got my agent, through one of those online pitch parties that are always really crazy on Twitter, because I love them, because I love to read all the ideas for books that I'm going to read one day. But it's so hard because you can't like them. Like only agents are supposed to like the tweets. And so I'm like, I want to tell you I love this book idea, but I can't. So I usually end up like, retweeting it and being like, someone buy this book.
Right.
I just get very excited. I love the pitch parties. They're very, very fun. And actually, all 3 of those books that I pitched that day that Rebecca liked have been sold by now.
Congratulations. Now, is there anything that you can tell us yet?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, so Christmas Company is out now, and then next year I have the first book in a novella series called Tea and a Cowboy is coming out from the Wild Rose Press.
Okay.
And then the first book in a series from Entangled called The Society Girl is coming out next year as well. So very exciting. Rebecca did very good work for me all year. She really did. She really, did amazing work. So I really do recommend those pitch parties. You have to do your own research. You have to really kind of dig in and see who you're going to work with best and who's going to, really advocate for you. But I do think they are a great way of connecting people and of helping people, find those new and exciting voices.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of people who have done this, but I never have, and I am assuming that at least some of my listeners haven't. So, can you tell us how exactly do you find? Like, I'm used to I Google things. That's how I find things. I'm not thinking that you could really Google it on Twitter. So, is it like a certain hashtag that you're just watching out
Yes,
for?
so there's a hashtag. It's PITMAD, PITMAD,
Okay.
and then from there, like usually when you search that on Twitter, it'll come up with like the top 3 accounts that like advocate for that. I think it's Pitch Wars is the one that does it.
Okay.
So PITCH Wars is the account that runs the PitMad events. And so
Ah,
sometimes they're themed. So like recently they had DV Pit, which was for diverse, own voices works. Then sometimes they just have, I think twice a year, they have just general pitches where they pick one day and they set a time and they say, you have, your character limit on Twitter to pitch your book. So, give us kind of the log line of your book. And then they usually ask you to do hashtags like, hashtag R for romance or hashtag YA, which kind of helps the editors and the agents who are going through all these, numerous pitches to kind of
yeah.
narrow down what they're looking for. And then if an agent or an editor likes your tweet, they'll usually have instructions on their Twitter page for how you get in contact with them and how you follow up on their interest in your manuscript. And it is only for completed manuscripts. It's not for like pitches or kind of spec
Right.
work.
Yeah.
But it is really exciting, and I think a lot of people have really kind of made those connections, and I think it's a great opportunity. I really do encourage people to do it. I am a success story, so I guess I'm, it's a success bias, but
That's
um,
right.
I do think it's definitely good for at least getting your name out there and kind of exploring agents and editors for sure.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thanks for telling everybody
Of
because I
course.
didn't know. And there was nothing that I could do to be helpful to anyone who would be asking me. I would be like, I don't know. Now, I think I saw a picture on your Twitter page that
Mhm.
looked very much like you are on a movie set. Am I right?
I went to the Home and Family set. I was a guest on Hallmark's Home and Family show,
Aw.
which was very cool. They interviewed me about the book, and we cooked the recipe from the book, which is sweet potato biscuits and country
Oh,
ham.
it
It
sounds
was
so
amazing.
good.
It was really good. The food was great. It was an incredible experience, to go out to LA and have these kind of magical days right around when my book came out. My mom came in from New Orleans, and we did Home and Family in the morning, and then drove to Anaheim and went to Disneyland in the afternoon to
Nice.
celebrate my book release. So it was really wonderful. Everyone was so kind, and it was on the Universal backlot. So
I thought it looked familiar. Yeah.
it was so funny because they tell us to go to this one entrance, and so we get to the entrance, and they put us on a bus that's going to take us to the Home and Family house. But it's really weird because you're just driving through an old west town, and they turn down the old west street, so it's like a saloon and a barn and like a prospector something and a train, and then like right on the end is like this big beautiful house where they shoot Home and Family every day. So it's like, I'm in the kitchen cooking country ham, and I can see like, the train and the saloon just like right out the window. So it was very magical. It was great. We had to pass the Psycho house to get there too. I was like, oh, I hope that's not an omen. I
That's
hope
right.
this is not a bad sign. But it was very, very cool. I had a great time.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Now, one thing that I've personally wondered about the recipes that are in the back of the Hallmark books is whether or not they're actually recipes from the author.
No, so this I think some of them are and some of them aren't. For my book, I had a couple of ideas of what I thought they were going to do
Uh-huh.
for my recipe, and none of them ended up being what it was.
Yeah.
And they actually asked me to add a line to the book about the recipe, so that it
Right.
could be kind of so some of them are
Tied
more
in.
important to the stories than others. So the stuffed crust pizza from Alexis Stanton's Timeless Christmas. He travels through time from the past, and he's never had a pizza before, so they eat pizza, and the recipe in the back of the book is pizza.
Yeah.
My recipe is one of the 18 million things mentioned at a Christmas feast. Um, so it's I think it's kind of it depends on which book you have and how important the food is to the story. My big scene was sugar cookies that I thought they were going to pick. But of course, it's a Hallmark book, and every Hallmark book has sugar cookies. So by the time my book was published, another book had already had sugar cookies as their recipe.
Right.
It's, it just depends. But no, it was not my recipe, which is just as well, because I don't think I make very good biscuits.
You had to learn the recipe. You had to learn to make it so you could make it in the home and family kitchen.
I did.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Thankfully, they had all the dough pre-rolled and made, so no one had to eat my biscuit.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I saw someone else. She was making, okay, I can't remember the name of the actress, but she plays the wife of the FBI agent on White Collar, which is sort of a, yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's a show that I really like. It's about basically an art thief / just really, really smart con man who the FBI says, you could work for us or you can go to jail. And he's like, well, I've always wanted to work for the FBI, And so it's kind of a comedic cop buddy sort of thing, except for, they're sort of on opposite sides because he's still like, I'm going to pretend that I'm just helping you. Yeah. So anyway, the woman who plays the FBI agent's wife was on, and she was making this like incredible looking, not like granola mix, but like a roasted nut mix. And she was putting them in cute little bags with like little clips with bows. And she handed them out, as gifts after Christmas parties. And I saw it and I told my husband, he's like, oh, we should do something like that and give it to like all the bus drivers around the city at Christmas. So that's what I'm going to do. So it's amazing. You never know what you might have been doing on Home and Family that somebody's like, that's exactly what I need to do for Christmas.
Well, it's funny. My younger sister, I have 3 younger sisters, and most of them are very younger than me, rather. And so my younger sister, Nia, is 13, and she had to do a book project for school on a book that she loved, because they had to read 40 books this semester. And so she picked my book, which I thought was the cutest thing in the whole world. And so today she's going to school with the country ham and biscuits for her class, so they can all have them while she does her presentation, which is very funny because the poor thing's vegetarian. She's going to have like her little sweet potato biscuit. But it was so sweet. She sent me a video yesterday of herself making them with my stepmom, and it was just the most precious thing in the world. I cried when she told me she was going to do it. So I think, I do love the way that, Hallmark does the recipes, because I do think, our books are a lot about community, and they're about togetherness and bringing people together. And I do think that food is another way that we do that, especially in the South where, the book's set in Texas. I do think people love to gather around the table, and I'm from New Orleans. My fiance makes fun of me because he's like, when you plan a day, all you do is you say, okay, we're going to eat, and then we'll have some drinks, and then we'll eat, and then we'll have some drinks. We might go to a football game, and then we're going to eat and have some more drinks. And I'm like, yeah, but that's how we like to do it. That's how we come together. We eat and we drink and we sit around the table, and, that's how we do our together time.
Yeah.
And the other way my family does that is watching Hallmark movies. So,
oh, nice.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm from Michigan, and eating and drinking is just a part of what we do.
Yes.
You know, we're like bears. We get all like, you know, kind of bellied up for the winter. Then we hide underneath all of our winter clothes, and then we're like, come spring, oh my gosh, it's time to eat some greens and get rid of all of my, you know, winter fat. I always think of us as being bears because I live near bears. But it's funny because the woman, a friend of mine who was doing my audiobooks, at one point she sent me a text and she's like, my gosh, doing your books always makes me so hungry. I don't know anybody else who talks about food in their books as much as you do. I'm like, oh, well, it seems like you're normal about. Yeah. Oh, man, this is great fun. I love talking to writers. Okay, so we know the book that is currently out is The Christmas Company, and then you've got 2 more books coming out in 2019. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going to want to find out, you know, where we can find those books as they come out. But I was just wondering, so you've gone through a whole lot of new experiences in the last year and a half, something like that. What are some tips that you can give to other people to kind of like help them through this journey?
Yeah, I think my biggest suggestion is also kind of my biggest weakness, which is I'm very insecure. I went to theater school because I wanted people to tell me that I was, pretty and could do to acting.
Yeah.
I think I had an acting professor once who said, you want to be in theater when you start crying and you accidentally find yourself in front of a mirror. Like we all, like, I think theater people kind of want a little bit of validation. And so I am deeply insecure, especially about my writing, because it's so much of my heart and it's so much of who I am. And one of the things that I did before I ever sent the book on submission, before I ever gave it to another living person, was I took out a notebook and I wrote down everything I loved about the book, like everything that I was passionate about, everything that I thought like that was good. And I did that and I feel proud of it, and everything that I just thought made the book special. And so I wrote, a page or two of that, and I put that away and I put it in a drawer. And every time I got a review that hurt my feelings, or someone made a comment or whatever that just kind of like was like, oh no, maybe the book isn't very good. I would pull out that notebook and be like, no, I did things that I was proud of in this work and that made me feel like I was a good writer and like I could really touch people. And to me, I think, all the good reviews in the world, they can be yours, but that one star that was just very cruel can just eat at you.
Yeah.
And so I think having that list of things that like no one can ever take those away from me.
Yeah.
I think that was really important to kind of keeping my morale through the whole thing.
That's a great idea. I love it.
And I also think the other thing that I would suggest, but do as I say, not as I do, is get off Twitter as much as you possibly can. Like Twitter is just a jealousy machine. You see everyone getting new book deals or getting on top 10 lists or getting Kyrgyz, stars, and you're just like, oh, I'm the worst writer who's ever lived. and that's not true. You're not. And you're going to feel that way, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
And so I am absolutely addicted to it. So if you cannot be addicted to it, that would be my first advice. But if you are addicted to it, I would say, one of the things that I had to do during my writing hours was I had to install like a productivity app that would just take Twitter off of my computer altogether, because I would be, writing and like having a good time and being excited about what I was doing. And then something would come up on Twitter and I'd be like, no one's going to read my book. That book's so much better. Like, who would ever want to read my stupid story? And then I would get like so down on myself and I wouldn't want to write anymore for the day. And I'd just be like, oh, this day's ruined. And I have my dramatic, shawl on right now. So it makes everything seem more dramatic. But I think for me, the biggest piece of advice that I can give to anyone at any stage of their journey, but especially when you're just starting out, is to really pursue the things that you love. Like, you have to pursue what excites you. And when I was doing playwriting, I had a friend who, we were having a conversation. He just read my play, and I was like, I don't know why I think anyone but me would be interested in this. Like, it's so weird and out there and stupid and specific. And he looked at me, and it was like the most tough love I've ever gotten from another person in my whole life. He said, how self-absorbed are you that you think you're the only person on earth who would like this thing? And he's like, if you love it and if you're passionate about it, there are going to be people out there who want the thing that you have.
Yeah.
And it's a story that currently isn't out there because you're writing it. And so you have to follow and pursue that thing that you love, because there's someone out there in the world who needs the thing that you're writing, the story that you're telling.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just, there are going to be a lot of like, especially now that we're at the end of the year, there's going to be a ton of those like, what writing trends are going to hit in 2019, and what are, agents going to want, editors going to want in 2019. And for me, I think you have the next big thing, and it's in your heart and it's in your head. And you just, if you write passionately and pursue it passionately, someone is going to read it, and the passion's going to come through, and the love for that thing that you've written is going to come through, and someone's going to see that and be excited by it. But I think on the other side of that, you also can't be afraid of revisions and of digging in and of, taking that thing that you love and, making it better.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I always tell people, because I'm a huge nerd. I think it's my playwriting background. I love feedback and I love notes. And I love people being like, this didn't work and this did.
Yeah.
Because I always know that they are, ultimately it's going to make the work better.
Right.
Like no one is giving you editorial notes to be like, this is a terrible book. You should be ashamed. You're garbage. That's not what they're doing.
And if they are not the kind of person
right.
you need
and then
to
you
be.
don't need to listen to them, and you can be like, all right, I am discounting that advice.
Yeah.
And so I would really encourage people, find the thing that you love, pursue it passionately. And I think you just you can't be afraid of letting it shine in any way that, it needs to.
Yeah. I love it. That is great. That's really great stuff. I love it. I particularly really like the idea of, while you're still loving how much you love your book, to actually write yourself a note and say, these are the things I love about my book. Regardless of what anybody says, I'm really happy that I wrote this and this and this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And then so that you have something to go back and read, because I know, like, I have some kind of mixed genre stuff going on in my writing. There's a lot of that these days. I've heard people say that it's a self-publishing problem, but honestly, there's so much cross-genre, mixed genre stuff. I think because there are so many people writing and so many people reading, and people like things that are, a combination. But I know that one of the biggest problems I had with my superhero series is that some people would read it and, write a review about, well, I really liked it, except for it had a whole bunch of like weird religious stuff. And I'm like, that's not at all the way that I remember writing it. And other people would write it and say, I thought that was a Christian book because like the girl like talks to God and prays and stuff, but she swears and stuff too. So she can't be a Christian. I'm like, yeah, okay, so that's not really what I meant either. But I'm thinking, yeah, I should probably write a few notes to myself about, this is what I wanted to write and I'm going to stick to it. And if people like it, great. And if they don't like it, that's fine too. But I think you're right. I think there is always an audience somewhere who thinks about life in the weird little funky way that you do, whatever that way is. And they're definitely going to be your readers. Your book sounds fun. It sounds really like totally Christmassy. I mean, Dickens and Christmas just go together. So now I can't say it, Dickensian Christmas celebration in a town sounds like something we all have to read. And this is going to come out on December 27th. So it's still in the Christmas mood. So I hope everybody goes out and finds it, which they can find it on Amazon.com, Hallmark Publishing. Probably
Amazon, Hallmark, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, iBooks, any of those. And then in store at Target stores, select Walmart stores, Mayher stores, Mayer, Meijer.
Meyer. Oh my gosh. That's like my home Michigan area. Meyer stores. Now I want to go fly back to Michigan just so I can see your book in the store. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
And select Hallmark stores. So you just, the Hallmark stores are a little bit hit and miss. So if you want to go to a Hallmark store, you might just want to call and check or check online. I think they have a store like locator.
Excellent.
So yeah, you can find it at any of those locations. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Oh, congratulations again. And where can people find you if they want to follow you and find out more about like when the new books come out?
Yeah, I am writer Alys on Twitter and Instagram. So it's writer ALYS. And then I am Alys Murray. I have an author page on Facebook. And then I am alysmurray.com.
Awesome. Great. Alys, thank you so much for being here and sharing your fabulous, fun journey and all of your tips.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was such a blast.